Hi and welcome to another very exciting tutorial. Today we're going to have a look at how we can build this nice little application here that has a simple table view controller and a cool slide out menu that I can access with my menu button in the top left corner. But if you have a more detailed look at where I am right now, then you will notice that I'm actually not in Xcode. This isn't Xcode, and this is also not my iPhone simulator. Where I am right now is the beta version of Framer X, and this video isn't sponsored in any way. I just have been asked by the guys at Framer to have a look at their current beta version, and when it comes to prototyping, I really have come to enjoy the features that you get with Framer, and also the ways how you can design components and interact with your design is kind of unique, and I'm going to show you a little bit about that later. But the main focus of this video is to explore what prototyping is about, how you can use it, and also how it will maybe help you to create better user experiences by testing your user interfaces more frequently and more easily. And if you want to get your hands on this beta version of Framer 10, then just click the link in the video description below that will bring you to the beta version website of Framer 10 that is launching soon. And if you scroll down a little, you can learn a lot about the features of Framer 10, but also you can enter your email address here, and the invites for the beta version are rolling out in batches, so you will be invited as soon as possible. And now enough with the talk about the tool that we're going to use in a second. Now let's first have a look at the concept of prototyping. So let's have a look at what prototyping is and how to actually use it. And prototyping actually allows you to quickly and inexpensively explore multiple iterations of your designs, to test the performance of it and also craft greater and better user experiences for your applications. Prototyping, however, is often confused with some other techniques or concepts, really. And these are sketches, wireframes, and mockups. The thing is that each of these concepts are static and only representing a single state of a proposed design. Sketches, for example, help you to explore ideas quickly and help you experiment with refined designs. And wireframes help you to map out an application structure. And mockups are already a refined representation of a finished design. What none of these techniques can do, however, is showing you how an app really works, what it does, and how you interact with it. And this is what prototypes are for. If you have a look at this model, this is really a simulation of how the finished product will look. In this example, we can see that you can scroll through a table view and also how to access the menu and how this feels. And this is what we are going to build in a second. But let me just quickly summarize the advantages of prototyping for you. First of all, it's quick and inexpensive because you can build all of these components and the interactions within a design application, like in our case now, Framer X. You could also use Sketch, for example, but I've come to find that in Framer X you have definitely more possibilities, and it just looks kind of cooler and it's more fluid. And this is very important for usability testing and also for your users or testers to really feel what your app could be like. And all of that together with the responses and the feedback you get will lead to better UI and UX experiences. So let's now head back and have a look at how we can build a user interface in Framer. So here I am back in the Framer X application, and I'm just going to show you some quick ways on how we can actually build such an application that you've seen really quickly. So at the moment, I have my contacts overview frame and my menu frame right here. And we're going to work with that in a second, but you've already seen that I have added some cells right here in my table view, and we're going to do that in a second. But first, let's explore this component right here on top. This is just a navigation bar header. And as you can see here on the left, I can actually access components and search for them like for a navigation bar and just drag and drop these components into our designs. Also, what's very cool is that you can apply user interface constraints as we would in Xcode and Interface Builder with auto layout constraints. So for example, if I'm selecting my navigation bar here on the top, I can pin that to the top, to the left, and to the right. And if I resize my frame right here, then my user interface elements and my component here are going to be resized as well. So just a little hint right here, but now I'm going to click on my plus icon here and add a new frame, which is very similar to artboards in Sketch, for example, and I just want to build another iPhone X frame here, and I can just click here because the application already assumed that I might want to build another iPhone X screen, and I'm going to change the background color to be black. And I'd like to start by adding some text, so I'm just pressing T on my keyboard to add a little bit of text. I'm going to start with, let's say, Jane Apple Seed right here, increasing the size here a little. After switching to San Francisco Pro Display as my font, I'm going to go with maybe 24 for now, and I'd also like to have this, let's say, semi-bold, and this is going to be the name part of my cell. Just copy that here and you get these layout guidelines that are really helpful, and I'm going to give her a position, let's say legal and finances, and decrease the size here a little bit, let's say 18, and maybe also go with thin, or maybe that's a little too thin, but light. I think that's kind of cool. And this is going to be the text part of my table view cell, but I also want to have an image of my employees or my coworkers right here, and there are of course several possibilities. I could just add an image, for example, or I could add a rectangle right here and fill this with an image. But one other cool aspect of Framer is that you have a cool store here that, for example, allows you to get Unsplash photos or logos or whatever, or even a iOS UI kit package that you can then integrate and use it as I just did, like with the navigation bar. You could also use an action sheet here, for example, or a share sheet. But what I'd like to do now is search for avatar. And if I have a look at that, you can get a random avatar. So this package actually downloads random avatar images from uifaces.co, and we're going to use that in a second. So just go ahead and install this random avatar package. And if we go back to our design, then we can actually have a look at our components list here and search for avatar. And this is actually it, this tiny little blue element that I can just drag and drop right here, and as you can see, we get just an avatar, and I can resize that. I think, well, that would be a great size for me. Just position that somewhere here, and that's it. So just making some adjustments here. What I also like to have for my table view cell to have is a little divider, so I'm just adding a path. Click here, click there, and that's actually it. This is going to be my path, and this is actually also how my table view cell is going to look. And just like Sketch has symbols, we can use a pretty straightforward concept here as well to create a master object, if you like. So I'm just selecting all of these elements, right click, and then add a frame around them. And once I did that, I can right click again and create a design component. But I can also rename it by double clicking here in my layer area and name it, for example, person cell. And with that, I have, if you'd like to call it that way, a class or a struct of my person cell with the properties that we have defined, with the image, with the name, and the position in the company. And I can just now press Option on my keyboard and copy these cells and have instances of each cell. Now this is already pretty cool, so let's just do it a few times. And as you can see, there are these guidelines that help me to see that I have always the same distance of 18 pixels. So just adding a few more. We can also increase the size of our frame here a little bit to get even more cells. And I'm copying them, and this is cool, and I have to pay attention a little bit so that I do not actually move them too much to the left or to the right. But there is yet another cool feature that we can use here, which is called stacks. So again, I'm going to choose a new frame. Again, I would like to use the iPhone X frame, and Framer suggests me to put that below my my main window right here, which is fine actually. I just drag that next to my main window or main frame of the application. Just dragging and dropping that to here, and we're good to go. And now what I'd like to show you is, after making the background black with the fill, I'm going to add a so-called stack layout component. Just make it as big as the whole frame right here. And this is actually kind of a stack view that you know from iOS and from the interface builder. So what I can do now is actually, it says here drop items, and I can drag and drop items from my frame here on the right, which is pretty cool. Just doing that right here, just dragging and dropping and dragging and dropping, and maybe making it a little larger as well. So I'm just dragging another one to my stack right here, maybe even copy yet another one, and now I can actually also get rid of my third frame here. And now the cool thing is that we can configure this stack as we could a stack view in Interface Builder. So for example, I can start with the alignment and say that the alignment should be start, which is kind of left, and I could also increase the gap between each cell, which maybe should be 20, and I maybe want to add a padding of 10, so, or maybe even 20 right here as well, which is a little bit cooler. And with that, I can really easily design really quickly lists like that and not have to worry about things like spacing. And the cool thing about using these design components, what we just did with our cell, is that if we make adjustments to the master, which is also indicated here in our layer area, so for example, if I plan to adjust the position of my position label here a little bit, and I think, well, maybe we should put a little bit more towards the bottom, and maybe we should decrease the size, but therefore set it to bold, we can do that, and this is going to be applied to all of our instances. So this is a very cool feature and very useful feature to just have to make changes to the master. But you can also still override each of the instances. So I do not only want to have Jane Appleseeds, but also maybe a John Doe in my list, or even a Tony Stark, for example. Then I can do that by just overriding the properties here for the different instances. Now, we already did now create a very cool table view, but how can we integrate that into our contacts overview? We could, of course, do that right here, but then we wouldn't be able to scroll through it. And there is another cool element, which is kind of a scroll view, so I can just add another layout component here, which is called scroll, and then I drag that up and just make it the right size for me. And if you have a look at the right here, there's this little dot, which allows me to connect this scroll view with another frame. And boom, we have actually inserted the frame here on the right into our main element, our contacts overview, and still, if I make changes on the right, these changes are immediately reflected also in our scroll view. So a very cool technique. And if we now click on our overview, frame and hit the play button in the top right corner, which activates the prototyping mode, then you can see that we can really scroll through our table view just as if we had created that in Xcode and really used it in the simulator. And yet another cool thing for prototyping is if you link a component like the hamburger button here in the top left corner with another element like our menu. And therefore, I just have to click on my link button here on the right, and this gives me the opportunity to link my button with something else like our menu, for example. And once I did that, I get different options. Like, for example, I want to target my menu, and what I'd like to do is have a overlay or a modal transition. And a overlay is actually exactly what I want, and the overlay should originate from the right. So I'm just selecting the right button right here, and if I hit play and I click on the hamburger button, then I get my nice transition here, and I get my side menu. And if I were to use the modal transition, then of course I would get this modal animation, which is also really, really nice. So as you've seen, these are just a few of the things that you can actually do with Framer 10, and you've seen how quickly we could build such a user interface populated with some demo data, and then also create the feeling that we're working with a real app, and just with these few minutes of effort we put into that. If you were to create that in Xcode, you can imagine how long it would take to actually build the table view cell, then adjust all the things, get the image data, get the images into your application, prepare all the view controllers that you would need, and so on. And here you're still in the design phase. You still can make all the changes without having to write a single line of code, and this often helps to just refine how your app should look like and how you could improve your general user experience. So I hope you liked this little excursion into user interface design and prototyping. Let me know what you think about Framer X and if you plan to use it in the future. I thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.